To know that at 13, my marriage was recognized legally here is mind-boggling to me.
My whole life I was groomed to marry young. My whole life I was taught that my goal was to marry and be a wife and a mother.
You know, I had just finished my freshman year in high school. I was living with my mom, going to basketball games. I joined the ROTC. I wanted to go into the Air Force. I was living in Colorado at the time. And my mom told me that, I was going to go visit my dad that summer.
I was in love with Lisa Frank. I had every coloring book. That was like my thing. I loved Barbies. And one of the moments that I remember was being in the 4th grade, having a crush on a boy, and telling myself, Naila, this can never be because you're already spoken for. Imagine thinking like that at the age of 8.
Well, we basically went to a religious conference in Los Angeles. During the course of that conference, I was introduced to somebody in the morning, and I was basically told, oh, here's who was picked for you. So, go over and talk to them.
So the matchmaker brings you a match, and I'm never allowed to be alone with this guy. You always have to be in a public place. You're never allowed to have any physical contact with him. How well can you possibly get to know somebody under those circumstances?
So I went over there and talked to him, and he was a 28-year-old man. I was 15, so he was almost double my age. And then after that meeting, I was told that I was going to be married that same night.
That's when it really hit me that I do not want this, and how in the world can I get out of this? And I remember when they were doing it, nobody asked me. I was in one house, my dad was 3 houses down telling the priest I do for me.
I just remember asking one of the women, so where am I going to sleep tonight? And she just kind of looked down. That was it. I was physically handed over to this man who I just didn't know.
You trust your parents. You trust your parents, and this is something I can very much relate to. It's your own family that forced you into the marriage, and then that family that wouldn't let you leave. And it's so hard to understand why.
And nighttime would fall, my heart would drop because I was like, oh my God, he's going to rape me now. And I would look at his sister's little kids. I wish I was this young child right now who could go home and sleep with their mother and not with their rapist.
A common misconception is that child marriage and forced marriage happen in only developing countries far away, that it doesn't happen here in the United States. And unfortunately, because of the laws and policies that we have in place in the US, it's legal here to a large extent and happening here to a much greater extent than most people realize. It's so difficult for women who are facing a forced marriage or in a forced marriage to reach out and get help. Because in most cases, the perpetrators are their own parents, their own family, it's their loved ones.
I don't even remember being asked if I consented or anything. When your parent consents for you, you are not in the equation anymore. So you are no longer a person.
It was only 1 week after my wedding. It was exactly 1 week that I first discovered my husband was violent. That was when he, in a violent rage, punched his fist through the wall in our little apartment hard enough that he left a big hole in the sheetrock. And it was only a few days after that that he first threatened to kill me. And yet, there's just no way out.
Well, think about it. If you're a 16-year-old and you're in an abusive relationship and you want to escape that abusive relationship, let's say you try to run away from your abuser. You might get turned away at the local homeless shelter because you're not 18 yet. You might not be able to file for a divorce either because you're under the age of 18. Those are laws that are in place that are preventing child marriage survivors from even leaving their brutal relationships.
I just kind of gave up, and I thought, well, this is my life. And, I thought the best outcome is I don't live very long. And then it wasn't until I was 27, when things got really bad, that I finally came up with this idea that I was going to get out. And the way I did it was by going to college. And then during that time, I also saved up cash. So I found the one place in the house I knew he wouldn't look, which was a box of whole grain Total in the pantry closet. And over 5 years, got my degree and saved up more than $40,000 in cash in my box of cereal.
My fight for independence was basically through education. I slowly started realizing that it was not your typical marriage, and it never felt like a typical marriage. It just felt like I was stuck in this relationship with this person that I didn't want to be with. He was never a person that I would want to be with.
I was robbed of my childhood. I was robbed of being 12, 13, going to the movies with my friends. I look at my son and I'm like, wow, I was 2 years younger than him and I was engaged.
Young women and young girls have just as much right to education and freedom as anybody else.
For every one like me who gets out and stops the cycle, there are so many thousands more who are still in it. And that is just so sad.